Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Anime Movie Podcast with your hosts, Kat.
I'm Joe.
And today we're talking about a film called Patema Inverted, which is one that I purchased really early on, probably about a year ago when we were first starting to talk about doing this podcast. And it took us so long to actually watch it.
Yeah. It was in our tournament every once in a while, and it's, there are some movies that enter the tournament a lot, and it takes months and months and months and months before we get to watch them. I remember the first one that we really noticed it being kind of like a problem was Wolf Children.
Oh, yeah.
And we were like, we're never going to end up watching Wolf Children. But Patema Inverted has taken that crown and ran with it until today.
Yeah, like 11 and a half months of tournaments.
Yeah, that is crazy. But, it wasn't entered in all of the tournaments.
No, we don't need to get into the details.
Yeah. So, this is a 2013 movie by a gentleman. It was directed by a man named Yasuhiro Yoshiura. And it's part of his studio, which is called Studio Rika, which he founded himself. And he has like a couple of like short films to his name. He's got a couple of like directing episodes of anime series to his name. But nothing that we've done before, or nothing that is really I've seen before that I'd be like, oh yeah, I know him from X. This is the only thing that I would really know him from, which could be seen as a little unfortunate. Don't know how you feel about this movie. It's very bizarre. And it's very confusing at times. And it confused me a lot because there's a lot of different physics at play, a lot of different science at play, a lot of science fiction at play.
This reminds me a little bit of some of the earlier Makoto Shinkai films, but it kind of has its shit together a little bit more than some of those movies, like The Place Promised in Our Early Days and The Children Who Chase Lost Voices, but has these sort of like sci-fi, fantasy kind of concepts. And it sets it up in this way that you're like, okay, interesting. Like, tell me more. And then at some point it kind of falls apart.
Yeah.
It falls apart a little bit. So I think there's some things that are done really cleverly and really well and are thought through a lot, which, some other films might not have. But it's got some problems.
Yeah, I think that where it falls apart is when they start to try to explain most of it. Like, that's always the Achilles heel of these really high concept science fiction things most of the time, is they're like, oh, it's this crazy awesome concept. And you're like, oh, I'd love to see how that plays itself out. And then they're like, well, this is how the world works. And this is how the story goes that we've invented. And then you're like, wait a minute, how could that be? And then you're just like sitting there. And then by the end of the movie, you're like, this is a mess.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the same concept could be done well. I don't think that the concept at its core is really at fault here.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting concept.
I think the biggest problem is you don't have very much characterization where you care about the characters.
Yeah.
And weirdly, it's kind of like an ensemble cast where nobody really stands out.
Yes,
but you
I'll
don't
agree with that as well.
You don't have a lot of weight towards one person or another that you feel like you're really following or empathizing with. It's like everybody's a little bit along for the ride.
Yeah, I also had a difficult time sussing out who's the good guys and who's the bad guys.
Really?
Yeah, kind of.
Couldn't tell by some of the animation.
Well, there's definitely like a very, very evil guy, but like
the big baddie in this is so evil, it's actually kind of funny. Like they tried so hard to make him evil.
Yeah, and they gave him all the like demonic music that comes and it's got the evil bags under his eyes.
He
and they
always looks like he's telling a ghost story.
I know, I was going to say, they always have the lighting from under, like he's like, ooh, like campfire ghost stories.
And then like wide eyes but tiny pupils.
But then also like the quote unquote good guys, good faction of people are also kind of dickheads and they look down upon the other people. And it's like, well, who am I rooting for here aside from our two lead characters? Which
who's the
am
underdog?
I really? Yeah, I don't know who to root for here.
Yeah, and I think that the other problem is the scale, because you have this kind of like world building, but it feels like it's a small town.
Yeah.
You know, there's just kind of like not enough people. This place seems to only have children and police that look like, you know, the Jinro.
Yeah. Wolf Brigade people.
Wolf Brigade police. And then the one really evil guy, you know, wearing the very royal looking jacket.
And then one teacher.
And one teacher. That's it. Like that's all you kind of see. Every other place you see is like abandoned. So maybe this is post-apocalyptic, but it feels like kind of too organized to be post-apocalyptic. But it's that kind of, you know, it's either 2067 or 2167, and we're, you know, looking at a future that is a dystopian, very controlled society. And there's a little bit of world building that goes into that. But I kind of wanted to know more because it just seems to be this one school.
Yeah, I would like to know more about that world. Like what happens is there's two different worlds in this movie, and like people from each world end up encountering each other, and then it's like this, oh, you're the bad guys. Oh, wait, no, you're the bad guys. I heard about your kind. You're the evil ones. And they're like, what? I'm the evil ones. You're the evil ones. And then there's a big hubbub and everything goes to shit, basically. But I would have liked to have known a little bit more. You only see like 3 rooms in each of the worlds, and the rest of the time is spent with like weird dialogue about the sky.
I think that one of the worlds is just one school and a government building.
Yeah.
That's the whole, and dormitories, I guess.
And the other world is just pipes.
Yeah.
It's just pipes and tunnels.
Yes. I need to turn off my air conditioning.
Okay.
For shame.
Should I continue blabbing about this movie while you
if
do
you're
that?
uncomfortable sitting silently.
So yeah, our main characters are a girl from the pipe world. I don't know what the name of that world is. Maybe Kat will know when she gets back. But she's from the pipe world, and her name is Patema, and she's kind of like a little explorer girl who's like very interested in figuring out the mysteries of the world and what's going on beyond the regions that she knows. And the people that look after her are basically like, don't do that. That's the danger zone. Highway to the danger zone. Let me finish.
Were you going to do another verse?
No. You were about to interrupt the danger zone part.
I feel like she doesn't have parents because the characters in her life are an elder and then a kid named Porta that kind of seems her age.
Yeah.
And
She's got a crush on her.
yeah, spoilers.
Sorry, everybody.
And she never talks about her parents or having parents. But she does have like an older figure in her life.
Yeah, that's who I thought was her parent, and then turned out it wasn't.
Yeah, like her unofficial...
Her father figure,
older uncle, kind of...
older brother type deal.
Yeah, maybe older brother.
Because she thinks he's really cool. She's like, oh, this guy's cool.
I was going to say uncle, but uncle makes it creepy for some reason.
Yeah, uncle's got a bad reputation, dude.
Yeah, and then, the character that we have in the other world who's Eiji, we hear about his dad, but we never hear about his mom.
Yeah.
So there's like a little bit where I'm like, not that that's super important, but these are kids. Like their parents are still going to be involved in their lives. Unless he's supposed to be at like boarding school. I guess they do have like dormitories.
Yeah, it looks like he's at a boarding school. Everybody's dressed very properly, and his world is like all about law and order, and there's all these ridiculous, insane laws that no one could ever obey.
Like don't look at the sky.
Like one of the laws is don't look up. Like what?
Yeah. And it's supposed to be this kind of 1984, Michel Foucault was panopticon, where you're always being watched and that's how you're kind of controlled. And, there's a lot of this that feels very sort of like young adult novel that goes into that sort of maybe sci-fi or fantasy. You've got like the parent trauma. You've got the, worlds colliding where, people meet something or someone that's not of this world. What other tropes were there? Oh yeah, some kind of a police state or like
dystopian government.
Dystopian government and government conspiracy.
Yeah.
And all of that. But so think Divergent or think about
Hunger Games.
Hunger Games.
Any of those bullshit ones. I'm surprised that Divergent was the first one that came to your mind over Hunger Games.
Well, Divergent has a bit more of the of that kind of more similar dystopian, everybody be in these lines, because in the Hunger Games, since you get all of these districts or like colonies, the ones that are further away kind of have more freedom. They're not really watched as much, and so there's more of this like classist thing where in the middle everybody's got a lot of money and drinks things to make themselves puke so they can eat even more food, whereas but this is all about like regiment structure, uniforms, being watched all the time style.
Didn't they never finish the Divergent series of films?
They made 3 of them, and I think there were 3 books.
I think that they tried to do like a 2-part for the third thing, and they never finished it.
Really?
I'm pretty sure.
I
could be wrong. But
I also really enjoyed that movie.
You liked those movies? They looked awful.
They got worse as they went on, but I really enjoyed movie number 1.
Those are the ones with Miles Teller, right?
Yes.
That was the beginning of my hatred of Miles Teller. I saw him in those movies, like just in the trailers.
Just in the trailers. I was like, so you did watch them.
I was like, this guy looks like a fucking asshole. And I didn't like Shailene Woodley.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't like how she looked in it. I was like, this all looks all bad.
And the sort of main love interest in that is in Castlevania as one of the voices.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Castlevania. Good show.
It is a great show. So I think that kind of highlights some of the bigger problems this has before, going into some more detailed stuff about where the science lies or fantasy and all of that. But I like the music in this.
I did not like the music at all. I wrote specifically, like at the beginning, there is a scene where like people are talking about some really, devastating and like dangerous stuff. And it's like this music underneath of it. And it's like, this does not match at all.
I thought some of the orchestral score was really good when that stuff came up. And there were just moments where I noticed the music and enjoyed it. But if I believe you, I believe that there are scenes where the music did not match the feelings.
Yeah. I mean, I know exactly what music, like the score where it's like the sense of wonderment score. And that was all right. It was very like you're in Disneyland and you get on a ride and you just like go over like the waterfall, like you're in Cars Land and you see Radiator Springs and it's just like, oh, this is the wonderment music. But most of it I thought was bad. And especially the credit song.
There was some kind of like lo-fi music that I found very pleasant, and I was like, this is cool. I'd play this.
Yeah. Hold on, we didn't talk about like what the plot kind of, like we talked about vaguely about what the plot.
Yeah, I didn't know how non-spoiler we were going to be going here.
Well, I mean, if you look at the fucking the cover of this thing, like, so the 2 different worlds, they're arguing about who's the upside down one, because if you go into the other world, you're like floating and you have to be held down, and then vice versa.
It's less about floating and more about gravity.
Yeah.
So gravity switches, and not just for the human being, but for all the objects that they own from their world. And there was a point that you made earlier about how you can't really tell who's the evil one. And I think that that's really great thematically, showing what's going on in this situation where you are looking at concepts that anthropology looks at a lot, which is the other and otherness and relativity.
Yeah.
And I thought that the way that they played with that was pretty interesting. And they did that with, you know, who's evil, who should be afraid of the other one, should they be afraid of the person who's unlike them, and then also, you know, if you're in my world and you're on the ceiling, like who's the upside down one, you know, and so that stuff I thought was cool.
Like it does get confusing at times though, because we'll get into it in spoilers, but the way that the physics of these worlds work gets very confusing for me, at least. So yeah, people are upside down.
Oh god, I thought it would never happen. I thought my eyes were just going to sit here in water, and I just get really uncomfortable with nose tickling. Anyway,
what did you think about the animation of this movie?
It could have been a lot worse. There were moments where they did this effect that kind of look like old video that's being slowed down.
Yeah.
Like there's not enough frames, there's frame blending, and the movement's a bit weird, and it bothered me every single time.
Yeah, there's times where it looks like, and it's like hard to say this because it's animated, but it looks like stuff is out of focus. And
for sure is, yeah.
And it's like jittery. And like I know exactly what you're talking about when they're like they're remembering something, and it is supposed to be like old VHS film, and it's jittery and grainy looking. But even like at the beginning when Patema is like exploring her world, there are times where she's looking around and the animation is very jittery and it just doesn't look right. I couldn't explain it, but it just looks weird.
Yeah, and there were some problems with how they rendered focus sometimes. Like there's a part where they're doing these like rack focuses between bits of metal, and when the metal comes into focus, like it's beautifully rendered. It's just gorgeous. But like the timing and the way it kind of focuses doesn't look natural. It doesn't look like it would look on the lens of a camera.
Yeah.
And there's a few moments like that, and they try to do something where they have a main character in the foreground blurred and the background becomes in focus, and the blur of the main character looked really weird.
Yeah.
But I liked some of the designs. I liked how the world looked. And it's nothing like, you know, King of Thorn.
Yeah.
It's just
shockingly it wasn't that bad.
You know, or those, and you know, it's clearly CGI, but it's not so heavily CGI, or it doesn't stand out from the rest of the animation and look odd.
Yeah. I would say that like as the movie goes along, it gets better, or maybe I just got used to the animation style.
Yeah.
But at the beginning, I was like, this looks really rough. But maybe it got better throughout the movie. But yeah, it's not the worst. The character designs are pretty cool, I think, or at least pretty standard. Like there's nothing blowing me away, but there's nothing like holding it back.
I did think that Patema's gray hair mixed with dark pink eyes was a very cool look.
Okay. I thought that AG's brown hair with blue eyes was very cool. It looked a little familiar.
I mean, I've always been a fan of that look myself. So.
A little familiar, everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I could have the choice to have gray hair and dark pink eyes instead of what I've got going on, I might do it.
Okay. I wouldn't. And I wouldn't if I were you either.
I see. All right. Well, then that's off the bucket list.
All right. So anything else before we get into spoilers?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that there's some really cool subtle hints in the beginning about what's going on, because it builds up to this idea of the upside downness. And early on with this character, Patema, who's inverted, she is right side up to us.
Or is she inverted?
Sure. But you start to see these little hints. You know, in the very beginning, you see that there's a backpack, but the zippers on the backpack are going directly up. And if you're not really paying attention, you might not be like, wait, why would the zippers be going directly upward?
Yeah.
And then when she's walking around in this environment, you see an exit sign, but it's flipped. And it's on the floor. And there's just these like little things like that, you know, and I think that those aspects are really nice, and I like the way that it builds to this idea of the upside downness. And if you didn't know anything about the movie before, putting it in, that, you'd kind of be eased into it and have these little hints like to look out for. And it's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there's also like a picture that she has that if she lets go of it, it just goes to the ceiling. So there's some hints in there. It's like, oh, okay, something's off.
Yeah, something was weird. Yeah, and I like how they show that and builds it up slowly instead. You don't really get these exposition dumps until later. They do give you some time to try and kind of figure it out and start to think about it.
Yeah.
That's it.
All right. Shall we spoil Patema Inverted?
Let's spoil this.
They wouldn't spoil this, right?
Oh,
You
God!
can't spoil
Spoilers,
this.
please
Right?
don't
spoil
Spoiler talk, spoiler talk, anime movie podcast, spoiler talk.
So what do you want to spoil first?
I think at the end of this, that there is a kind of turn it on its head explanation that they try to give.
Turn it on its head? Nice one.
Yeah. Essentially, the idea is that there's been these science experiments and they're trying to harness the power of gravity, and it goes wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And a bunch of the population and like buildings and all kinds of things just start falling into the sky. And then people are left behind, and they decide for some reason immediately when this like horrific tragedy happens that it must be because they're better than them.
Yeah. And those people were sinners. That'd be like when the Challenger exploded. They're like, well, that's what we say. We don't go into space and don't even look up anymore.
Like, that's just like, that's the crazy person reaction to that situation. Like, if that many people suddenly start falling into the sky, first of all, horrifying.
Rapturous.
Yeah. And then after that, there would be tragedy, and a lot of people would be very frightened by the concept. And then you'd have these crazy outliers. It'd be like, they were the sinners. They were sucked into the sky because of their sin. And you'd be like, oh, don't listen to the crazy person.
Well, I feel like, so I think that this is their first time like ever experimenting with flying, right? In this world? In Aiga?
It had nothing to do with flying necessarily. They said harnessing the power of gravity.
Okay. Well, I guess, yeah, I don't know. I was under the assumption that it was like, it's their first attempt at flying.
Oh, because of AG's father?
Yeah. And he's like, all right, I'm going to go flying now. And then when he tries to do that, everybody gets sucked up into the sky, which, I don't know what year this is supposed to be, but I could theoretically see it, people being like, oh, this is witchcraft and this is God punishing us for our hubris or something.
I don't think that's the causality. Like, my understanding of it is that there was this experiment, this horrible thing, and then people flew off into the sky, and then the rules came where you're not allowed to look up, and the sky is like an off limits thing. And then Lagos, this guy from the inverted world, comes and meets AG's father. And AG's father like hides him away from the evil police guys. And then Lagos is changing his mind about the world and how the rules are bad. And they encourage each other to like go and explore and be like, you know what? Like this police state thinks we shouldn't be focusing on the sky. We shouldn't look there. We should go there and explore and like see what's going on. And so they build the flying craft to go and see what's up there.
I completely forgot that because I misremembered. I thought that AG's father's flying experiment was the cause of the like gravity explosion.
No.
Thing. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's okay. So after the gravity thing, that's when they're like all up in the air stuff is banned, and then AG's father is like, okay, yeah. Well, then, yeah. I don't know, man. Like it is a crazy world, but I could see people like living in fear like that. Like I'm not saying it makes the most sense, but most of the shit that's happening in our world right now doesn't make the most sense.
Yeah, I mean,
there's people that think the Earth is flat. I mean,
sure,
and that's like a loud population of people.
Yeah, the big ideas sometimes are the loudest.
Yeah, so I mean, I could see people being like, nope, the sky is evil and don't look up at it.
And that's what I'm saying too, that there would be those people, but it wouldn't be everybody.
Yeah. Also, the evil guy has like Frollo energy from Hunchback of Notre Dame. Like he seems like a religious, like zealot. Is zealot the word that I'm looking for here?
Yeah, that's the word.
He's very like religious and all about law and order. And the people that went up into the sky were sinners, which is kind of like rapture type stuff. And everybody, but the people that in the rapture, the people that go up are the people that are saved, and everyone that's left on earth are the sinners. Well, this is the reverse, where everybody that went up.
Or is it?
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely has that sort of Castlevania priest feel, that like medieval witch hunting zealot. And it's kind of weird to have that set in the future, you know, especially when it almost seems like this place has gotten even more secular based on this sort of like really strong government. And it's just weird that, you know, in this near future, things might get more religious again in that heavily of a religious way.
Yeah, especially in such a technologically advanced society. Like I feel like as science and technology advances so hard, like they've got some incredible technology in Iga, and then also super, super strict and religious. Like that doesn't usually jive together, but this is, I mean, it's an interesting take on it, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that they could have made, I mean, maybe they just needed to motivate that guy to be that evil and strange. And, you know, and that guy was supposed to be, what was his name? Is he like the chief?
I have no idea what that guy's name is. I just kept writing the evil leader.
Well, the evil leader, as we've decided he's called.
Yeah.
He keeps talking about how he's going to question the inverted. You know, how he questioned Lagos until he killed him, and he's going to question Patema after she's captured. And I don't understand what he wants to know.
Yeah, like what is there to know?
What's he asking?
I think that he's saying that he's going to question him, but he's secretly just going to kill him.
Okay.
Like he doesn't give a fuck. He's got all the answers. He's a man of conviction, so he's like, no, I'm right. Everybody that's inverted is evil, and they don't deserve to live. Like we never see him ask any questions. We just see him explain to Patema what happened in the past with the gravity explosion, and then but the gravity experiment gone wrong. And then people ascend to the sky, and he's like, those people were the sinners. And like, he doesn't ask her like, so is there like, how does the world work for you? Like, where did you come from? He's just like, and then here's this dead guy that I killed. That was one of your kind, and I'm going to kill you probably. It's like, you could ask her a question now.
Yeah.
He doesn't. He wants to put her in some kind of weird bed in the sky.
Yeah, that if she falls off, she'll, I guess, go to like the bottom of a glass bottom boat, essentially.
Yeah. Well, the roof was open, so if she
was it
off,
open?
Yeah.
But then later they break the roof.
It was open in a little small circle that surrounded the bed, and everything else was glass.
Oh, I thought it was glass in the center too.
And that would have been totally worthless.
Well, no, it still would have been kind of scary.
I guess it's kind of like that building in Chicago where it's like a glass floor and you can look down.
Yes, I've been there. I've done that.
Was it terrifying?
For me, yeah. But I'm very afraid of deep, wide open spaces.
Wide open spaces. Room to make the big mistakes. She needs new faces. Dixie Chicks. I just sing the whole song. Dixie Chicks break.
Yeah. And then we get sued. I almost feel like drawing like a diagram of what is kind of going on in this world that kind of confuses me. So I'm gonna.
All right, you go for it. Now we are
do this.
For the audio listeners. You're fucked. This is why you need to subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm stalling right now. Draw your thing.
Okay, I'm gonna. Okay.
Subscribe to the YouTube channel. This is where we have all the greatest content. A lot, the audio podcast is also great content as well. But you're missing out on this drawing that Kat's doing. Which explains Patema Inverted, hopefully, because I am a little lost, and hopefully this will make a little bit of sense because I have no idea what happened in it.
Yeah, I don't know how good this is as a visual explanation. And I'll try to also give our audio listeners a chance to understand this too.
Sure.
So basically, we start out in this underground world, which is all of this business here. And that's where Patema starts out.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have what we assume is the right side up world directly above it. And there's a hole between the two. So if she in her world falls off, then she's going to fall into the world Iga. And then she's going to keep going past Iga.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like something in the sky that she can somehow also stand on. That's kind of because it's kind of the same direction as the place underneath Iga. And that place is abandoned for some reason. That's where the flying vessel that Eiji's father fell out of, turns out he was shot out of it. That's where that goes. And that's where he like finds the notebook and reads about his dad's thing. And they have this like connecting moment. And then they figure out a way to get that flying machine in the sky city to come back down to Iga.
Mm-hmm.
And then they decide that they're going to go back into this underground world, into where Patema's right side up again. And then at the very end of the movie, they break through the floor of the upside down world and they make it to yet another world that actually has sky, and it's somewhere where Patema is now right side up. So there's like all of these layers, and I think that what it's trying to say, because when we get to the very bottom world where Patema's right side up and she can see the sky and not fall into it, there we see all of the sort of broken buildings and things that we saw in the scientific experiment gone wrong situation. And it kind of sounds like what they were saying is that, you know, the scientists were supposed to stay behind or something and make their new world. And it's kind of suggesting that rather than Iga being the place where, you know, the good people that survived stayed, that actually the people in that place are people who should have fallen into the sky. And it's actually Patema's people who are the right side up people all along. And I think that's what it's trying to say at the end. And it's done in such a confusing way. And I think the thing that ruins it is why the sky city, where it's totally abandoned and never explained.
This diagram made me so much more confused, and your explanation made me so much more confused, because this is how I see it. The world where Patema came from, and here I'll do the diagram here. So this is the world where this is Patema, right?
Yeah.
And then hold on, this is AG.
Yeah.
On Iga. So I thought the world that Patema came from and the world where AG's father's skycraft was are the same world, just this is her being outside of where she usually is. And I thought that this sky place was the same as Iga, but just outside of the city limits. I didn't think that there was a different sky city. I thought they just kept going back and forth between them. And then that could also be why I was confused about how the physics works in any of these places, because at some points, like, I'm like, wait, who? Because they also play with the perspective of like, you know, it'll just be like, oh, well, now AG is the right side up person, but he's in Patema's world and everybody's upside down. And then he was the right side up person in his world where Patema's upside down. And then sometimes they'll flip it to where Patema is the right side up person. And I was just like, wait, who is right in this world right now? Some people have weights tied to them, and like, I don't know how they like jump with each other, and like, I don't know how they work like a hang glider.
Yeah. And I think they, you know, I think that would be hard to keep track, and they actually kind of did okay with that. You know, I think that could have been so much more confusing. I think it's good to have the guided, like, all right, we're switching it now. But I think it made it hard to figure out who you were supposed to be relating to or who you were following, because, you know, it's like, you know, if we're seeing Iga as being kind of right side up to us and everything else is upside down, then, we're relating more to him. We're experiencing how strange everything is for him. And it's interesting to choose when to do which thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was following it fairly well until the thing in the sky happened.
Yeah.
I didn't think of it as kind of a loop the way you were thinking. I was thinking that, when the only reason why she was right side up in this world up here is because it's the same direction as where she is when they're in the underground place, like she'd never seen the sky, she'd never heard of the sky, she didn't know what it was. So she'd never been to this place where she was able to see the sky and able to stay on the ground and not have to stay underground. So I thought it was this layer cake situation. And I was like, as soon as they went down into here, I was like, oh, they're in Australia.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
They flush the toilet and it's backwards. Yeah, I didn't think that there was 4 different worlds. I thought there was 2 and they just kept bouncing between the 2. But I got lost in it because at a certain point they bounced back and forth like a couple times, and then all these other characters show up and some of them are upside down, some of them aren't. And I'm like, wait, where are we again? Where are we? Because then they get to like the new, in my theory of the movie, the new parts of the same world. I don't know who is supposed to be on the ground and who's supposed to be floating.
The only way I could see your idea of this making any kind of sense is if these gravitational experimentations ended up kind of fucking with the space-time continuum. Because when they go into the ground in Iga, they get to the world where, everything is upside down compared to Iga, and that's where Patema is from. Mm-hmm. When they go up into the sky, they get to the city in the sky that is abandoned and doesn't have any people in it. She's not seeing her people. She's not like, oh, I'm home. I found my people.
No, but Patema, when she comes down from the first time, she falls down a thing and then she's inverted on Iga. So when they go
that would
up,
make sense with this directional thing.
Yeah, but I'm saying when they go up into the sky and then land where the dad's plane was, they're going back up where she came from, I feel like.
No, because it's still the same direction. So if she's upside down when she's in her world, and that means that she's going to fall this direction. If she keeps falling and this is opposing in that direction, her feet are going to land on the ground here, and she's still going to be.
So I feel like she was always up here, fell down, went back up, and then went back down for the 4th place.
I don't know that makes any sense. Just because of the fact that they were really clear about how there was this fence here and how if you go down through this hole, then you get into their world. And if you come back up, then you're back into the Iga world. And like, why wouldn't she see any of her people up here? And also when they're there, it's kind of like you can see sky. Mm-hmm. There is an above them thing and there's like stars, and she'd never seen the sky before except in the picture. So how could she have ever been here, and how could this be a part of her world if they're all like underground?
Well, how did people get to where she was? Because didn't her friends from the underground world get to her at this point, at that place?
No, because then they figure out how to get the flying machine to fall back down.
To go back down to Iga.
Because Lagos had given Eiji's dad these weights from his world, which means that they'll take him up. So they're kind of like massive helium balloons in like a small space. So that's what they ended up putting into this flying machine. And so what he was working on was pulling those out of the flying machine so that it would start to, like work with gravity again and fall back down to Earth.
All right, well,
Iga.
As I've just explained, I was very confused in this movie. And as I've just explained now you see why exactly I was so confused. Because if your thing is right, I was like, oh, that's a completely different movie than what was happening in my head. I thought there was 2 worlds and they were just pinball in between. Now this movie makes even less sense. I need to rewatch this. Pause the podcast. We need to rewatch.
I know. Yeah, and sometimes you have to be like, am I dumb? Is
Oh.
that
I definitely feel dumb. I definitely feel way dumb.
I'm sure anybody listening to this right now also feels dumb.
Oh yeah.
Unless they know what's actually happening, then they feel really smart.
Unless they're watching this podcast, because we did not do a good job with the audio listeners. You really need to be watching this right now. I'm so sorry, audio listeners. YouTube channel though.
I tried.
Yeah, we did our best.
Yeah.
Kind of.
We
But
did our best try.
Yeah. I'm sure people listening to this or watching this right now is like, God, that guy Joe is such a fucking idiot. Like, how did he not know that there was 4? But,
Yeah, because I remember you saying like, oh, that whole time when they were looking at the stars, they were actually looking at the city.
The city, yeah.
But if she had just come up through that hole and then looked up and saw city lights of her own city, then that's a space-time continuum, like total confusion.
Well, then can you explain when, like at the end, when, they're mourning the death of Patema because they think that she's dead, and then she comes floating up from Iga with AG, and then the flying machine comes up. Are they on the ceiling when the flying machine comes and like breaks the floor? Because if they would have fallen down, they would have just went back to AG or Iga.
Yeah, my understanding is that when they hit the ceiling there, because it's Patema and Porta that are the sort of inverted ones when they get there. So my thinking is that they've gone to the ceiling of this underground world, which means that's where AG would be right side up. But then underneath his feet, it starts to break. And then you see that there is another world on the other side of that. And it's one that Patema can walk around in and be on the grass.
Yeah, see, how does that work? Like, that doesn't make any sense. God, I think this movie might be a bunch of bullshit. Yeah, because that's why I was like, well, how is it like that world isn't just like going up and down and all that shit,
Yeah, I mean, with the directions that they're inverted in each of these worlds, the linear example makes sense for why they would be in the direction. If their gravity is always going in the same direction, opposite of each other, if these are linear, then each of the places where they were in that direction makes sense for it. But if it ends up being a space-time continuum thing where they're in these loops or going around, the geography of it stops making any sense whatsoever. So, so what I'm saying is, neither of these makes sense.
Yeah,
neither theory makes all of the sense.
Yeah.
But I think that maybe that's going again into this theme of relativity, and it's like your upside down might be my right side up. Which one is right? Which one is correct?
Is the glass half full or is it glass half empty?
And it's kind of like, oh, well, nothing is certain anymore. I have to start to think more about, do I take all of my ideas about life for granted? And
isn't it all about love and one another?
I'm not starting to stray away a little bit from my point.
Should learn from all people of all different upside down ethnicities.
Although actually you're not far off from what Lagos's big plan was, apparently was to unite mankind. But wouldn't it have been good to know more about his plan to do that before he died? It kind of sounds like the much more interesting movie would have been watching Lagos and like AG's dad.
Yeah, would you watch a prequel to this?
Yeah, because some of the characters would have had actual goals.
Yeah.
and like sounded like more interesting people. This does kind of feel like a shitty sequel, except that I guess there's a little bit too much explanation.
Well, apparently this was like a web short or like a web comic or something before, and I think it might have been a prequel to this. There was something like that.
Okay.
That was before the movie. And I think it maybe takes place before the movie happens, but we didn't watch that, so we don't know.
But
what?
this would make a great video game.
No, it wouldn't.
Yeah, it would.
How would this make a great video game?
Because sometimes
There's no
you'd be on
action.
the ceiling and sometimes you'd be on the floor. Like you could make it like conceptually into a cool video game. There'd be like cool puzzles to do that would be like kind of like playing Zelda, and then you'd be like fighting baddies, and you'd have to like stick things in the right places to make a thing happen, and it would take you to like the upside down world where you could only do certain quests, and it'd be really cool.
I wouldn't play that video game.
You would only play that video game if it was Pokemon Snap.
Yeah, that game is great. That game is so great. Yeah, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. My mind is melted right now.
Okay.
It's mush. I mean, this movie mushed my brain, and then your diagram mushed my brain, and then all of my questions just further mushed my brain, and then realizing like, oh, none of this makes sense. Because I was like, okay, well, if your thing is right, well, then how does the physics of that work? And you're like, look, it doesn't make sense either. And I was like, okay, cool. Whew, all right.
Well, except the thing that you're talking about.
No, but my big question is the
I know,
Patema falling down the
I'm about
hole,
to
but
explain
then
that.
on the ceiling, but then she's right side up
It's
again.
because they're in the big building, and this is where she's upside down, so she would fall.
Yes.
And he's right side up. So when he connects to her, they start sinking down because he's heavier than she is.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're going with gravity, but then also slowly because she resists his gravity a little bit. So by the time they get here, then it means that she's right side up again, and then it appears that she's floating up.
See, I thought when she was at the top of the tower in the upside down bed, that's when she grabs onto him and they float up into the sky. And then they reach where his dad's hovercraft was.
Yeah, she'll fall into the sky.
Yeah.
And he went with her.
This
But
is the
his
worst podcast we've ever recorded. This is the worst podcast we've ever done.
And she had the weight on her too, going into
Yes,
the sky,
dude,
didn't she?
It's craziness.
Yeah. I mean, I still think that my diagram is true.
It could be. I'm not saying that it's not. It could be. I have no idea what happened in this.
I just want to give you a close up for a second of this fucking mess
Yeah.
of whatever I tried to do to explain my idea about this film.
And then the big reveal at the end where it was just like, you're next to Saturn or some shit. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, so they get into this final world where Padma's feet are on the ground and in the grass, and she can see sky. And
Yeah.
it's like, wow, I've never been in a world where I'm not falling into the sky when there's a sky there.
Mm-hmm.
And then for some reason in the sky, there's like a fucking massive moon, but it looks like Saturn because it has rings. Like we both just went, what's happening anymore?
And of course, that's when the movie ends. And you're just like, I guess we'll just have to take that for what it is.
It's just like sci-fi, space, post-apocalyptic fantasy wallpaper that they just decided at the end that they needed in this movie.
Yeah, I you know what's great is I haven't looked at my notes once during this whole thing because I've just been like, wait, what's happening? This is the worst I've ever been on this show. Usually I'm like, I'm the plot guy. All right, here's the plot. No, but I'm like, this plot, I can't decipher it. It makes no sense.
It's kind of nice that they never made the main characters smooch
Yeah.
or fall in love. They had a moment, they looked connected, and you're like, yeah, they've kind of been through it. All of this has been like these really terrifying, weird experiences to have.
Yeah. And that is how love happens. You know, you
According
feel
to
like
movies.
you're about to fall off the edge of the world. The person that, you know, maybe saves you, love of your life.
I think traumatic events do connect people for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
But and they showed that, but they didn't show them like
They
didn't make that a part of it.
I will say this: the concept of being and we talked about this while we're watching the movie, the concept of being upside down and having to hold on to somebody that's on the right side up is absolutely terrifying, and feeling like you're going to fall into the sky and then you just like
So
don't know when that's
scary.
going to end. That is so scary, dude. They did a great job of making it look really horrifying.
Yeah, and I think sometimes when characters are freaking out about something and you're kind of like, oh, shut up. But in this, I was just like, God damn, she is freaking out the right amount.
Yeah.
That is,
Especially when she's on the bed in the top of that dome, and it's like, people roll around when they sleep. She could just fall off of that bed and just go whoop right up into the sky.
and I find it creepier to be in the shed where you're kind of in the middle of nothing. There's nothing to hold on to. There's
Yeah.
nowhere to go. It's like, being in a floating, just isolated space where you can't get to the next thing that you could stand on. So it's essentially like being in a prison.
Yeah, it's like solitary confinement.
Yeah. And then you open the door and you're looking at your down, but it's actually up. God, let's not get back into it. But and you're looking it over, and it's like you could fall at any moment, and the only way to travel is to connect hands with somebody or to hold on to something heavy.
Yeah. Plus, not only are you like stuck in that shack on the ceiling, there's people out there looking for you who think that you're evil and a sinner and you're
Yeah.
there to like bring the apocalypse. And then there's like this army of Wolf Brigade, Jinro looking motherfuckers that are trying to like find you and kill you potentially. So it's like you only have so many places to hide in that shed as well. So it's the ceiling or the fan on the top of the ceiling. Like you're not going to get away.
Yeah. I think the important question to ask right now is who wore it better? Jinro or the security police?
I think these guys wore it better. Their outfits had like a red outline on them, and Jinro they didn't.
Yeah, it seemed more streamlined to put on their costumes, but less armored,
Yeah.
less mecha.
When the Jinro person first shows up in Patema's world, what was that guy doing there?
I wondered if I think they had some explanation right after that of the evil guy making some plans to kind of eradicate the inverted people, but then he also seemed to not want them to come into his world, but he wanted to find them. So I was like, are you worried about people in Iga knowing about them and what that might change their minds about? And they might start to understand that there's this conspiracy or something going on, but you do want to get rid of them. So you do want to find them.
Yeah.
And there was like low key Nazi vibes there.
Yeah.
And the sort of
absolutely.
like hiding the person who's being persecuted and all of that. But you didn't really get a sense of strong nationalism that usually kind of goes along with those sort of political themes. But yeah, I mean, I think that would be so scary. And I was trying to think of what I've experienced that is like being in that shack in the middle of nothingness and being pursued by these Jinro security police type characters. And I was thinking like, I was on a cruise once and, walked out onto the sort of deck in the middle of the night. And there's just like vastness everywhere. And it's just emptiness for miles. And I think you'd get that kind of feeling where it just feels like I feel so small right now and so vulnerable. And this is the only thing that's kind of keeping me from being in that.
Yeah.
And the sky and the water, seem to have no horizon, because of that time at night. It can be so dark out there. But if I fell off the deck of a cruise ship, I'd hit water.
Yeah, you'd hit water pretty,
I'd probably be left behind very quickly and die in that water.
Yeah, I mean, but you hit an end where you're like, oh, okay, I know what this is. I'm in water now. I felt like, a story or two.
Casual story or two.
But you know how to navigate water. You know how to swim. You can still scream and be like, blah, blah, blah. You're still on the same like plane as the cruise ship. but I just can't think of anything that would be like falling into the sky like endlessly.
Imagine being sucked into space from the ground.
That'd be so crazy, dude. So horrifying.
And I just feel like everybody just stay inside. Everybody just go inside.
Yeah.
Forever.
I mean, that's what happened with Patema.
Yeah.
They're in that upside down tube pipe world, which might also be the right side up world. And they might also be the good guys, but they hate the inverted Iga people. And the Iga people hate the pipe people.
Yeah, and that's what happens when you create otherness and have disagreement and fear of the unknown. And
So stop doing that, people. Chill with that shit. Be nice to everybody.
love the unknown.
Yeah.
Trust the things you don't know, always.
Yeah. Anything, go into a dark alley.
Ignore your survival instinct. And then we can have peace and love.
Do you have a favorite scene from this movie?
I don't know that I have a favorite scene, but I do think there's some really good comic moments. I actually had some good giggles with Porta and AG kind of teaming up.
Yeah.
And there's like little bits of slapstick that are genuinely very funny.
Yeah. And how it would work and be, because like you're getting used to the gravity of a different place where you're upside down and the other person isn't. Like there's a point where they're trying to break Patema out of her imprisonment, and Porta is walking on the ceiling and AG is walking on the ground, and then they both bend over, and then they both stand up straight, and then they bang heads with each other, and I was like, that's pretty creative and funny.
Yeah, and then Porta takes a couple steps and his shoes are squeaky, and for some reason just squeaky shoes on the ceiling is funny.
Yeah.
And then they are trying to avoid these video cameras, and they get into this ridiculous cross-hatched situation where they're both trying to kind of crab walk together on the ceiling, and that was also very, very funny. So I enjoyed those moments a lot. But I can't remember a specific scene where throughout the whole scene I was like, this is a great scene.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm with you. I feel like those comic moments between AG and Porto were the best parts of this, because it feels like they scrapped a lot of the mystery and weird science of the movie and made it more about kind of a love story. And I was like,
but then didn't actually take it to love story land.
Yeah.
Fully.
Yeah. It was just like, this is weird. This movie's weird.
It's again one of those movies where it's conceptually there is something here, and it has some moments of humor. There are some really beautiful things to look at sometimes, but it just needed another draft.
I think it needed 3 or 4 more drafts.
Yeah, you might be right.
Yeah. It was just made so it reminded me of, did you see the movie Us by Jordan Peele?
No, I did not.
Okay.
You can spoil it.
Well, no, it's basically it's a very engaging and enthralling movie, in my estimation, up until the end where they try to explain how the world works.
Right.
And then you're like, well, that world doesn't make sense and it would be impossible to do. That's how I felt about this, where I was like, okay, this is kind of interesting. I'm enjoying it. And there's the evil character was cartoonishly evil.
Really cartoonishly evil.
His motivations are just because I'm evil and everyone else is evil, but I'm right.
Yeah, they're like, why did you do it that way, sir? And he was like, to be more abusive.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how I felt about this, where it's just kind of it was interesting until they tried to make sense of it, and then the wheels just fell right off.
There was this really funny moment when we were on the couch, and I could tell that you were like, okay, I'm actually kind of interested in this. And I was thinking to myself, don't get too comfortable,
you
Joe.
Just wait. You just wait.
Oh, another funny moment that I had kind of forgotten about was when AG and Patema have their first meeting. There are some funny moments there because he's like, why are you upside down? She's like, why are you upside down?
Yeah, I love that she's just so in denial about being the upside down one. It's like, lady, if you let go of this guy's hand, you're falling into the sky. You're the upside down one, okay? You're on the ceiling. Like she's peering out of the top of a door frame at the world, and she looks down and it's the sky, and looks up and it's grass, and she's like, "You're upside down." It's like, all right, there's no convincing you that you're the upside down one.
And she's immediately very whiny and complainy, and sometimes that happens, and later on it's like, oh, they've grown because look how not whiny and complainy they are, and now they're kind of cool. But she kind of like chills, but doesn't become like better ever. But she's so whiny the like first time that they meet, and then he has to go back to really strict dystopia school, and he doesn't want to be late.
Yeah.
And then she's like they have this kind of moment, and she's like, "You promise you'll come back?" And he's like, "Yes, I will." And like I jokingly, like they like touched hands, and I jokingly turned to Joe, and I was like, they just fell in love.
And they were
that's what happens. But then he's walking away, and there's like this swell of wonderment music, and then she's like, "But also I'm hungry." And and the music stops, and then he's like, I can get you some food, like, and then it starts again, and she's like, "You promise you're gonna come back? Are you serious?" and it did it like 3 or 4 times. Yeah. And I really liked that.
I forgot about that. That was a really
very
good...
fourth wall breaking.
Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah.
That was a good moment in the movie. I feel like they could have played with that a bit more, like the funniness of all of the weird.
Yeah, if this whole movie had more of those moments and been very entertaining and funny, you might be able to forgive some of the deep confusion.
Yeah, if this movie was better, it'd be better.
For sure.
Yeah.
But like there's plenty of movies that like I enjoy so much to watch. I do not give a shit about some of the plot holes. I'm like, who cares? It was very enjoyable.
We've reviewed some of them on this podcast.
Absolutely.
Fucking Red Line.
That one I didn't forgive.
Yeah, I forgave a lot of it because I was like, that's cool.
You forgave it aggressively.
But yeah, I don't think either of us are really forgiving Patema Inverted too nicely.
Oh God, I forgot we'd have to give it an amp.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
I haven't even thought about an amp.
Is there anything that you want to bring up before we crank these amps?
I guess the last thing is just the guy at the end who is the crony of the evil guy, who just has a change of heart.
Yeah.
And
he saw that upside down people are people too.
Yeah, I guess. But I didn't feel like I saw him seeing that. Damn it.
Okay. We're gonna make it.
Yeah. But yeah, I just enjoyed that. I wrote down good old turncoat change of heart.
Yeah, he really did change his heart like so quickly with no motivation behind it. The next thing you just see is like he's freeing people. You're like, when did that happen? Like,
yeah, and I guess he hesitated before shooting AG when he was told to, and it was something the evil guy totally could have just done himself. But for some reason, he was like, "Here, you have this and do the thing."
The evil leader guy has the gun. It's his gun, and he's like, "I don't want to get my hands dirty with a gun. You do it, second in command." It's like, dude, you have the gun. It's your gun. Just fucking shoot the kid.
And he's constantly threatening to send a girl to her death into the sky. So who knows?
There's nothing holding him back from shooting AG.
Yeah,
just do it.
And yeah, that was the last sort of what's happening here thing I wanted to bring up.
All right. Well, do you want to crank it first, or should I crank it first?
I think you should.
All right, I'm cranking my amp to a 4.5 out of 11 for Patema Inverted. It was an interesting concept, not the best execution. There was some interesting things happening. I was like engaged for a little bit, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. Where is this going to go? And I remember the first time you watched it, you were like, this movie is dumb as fuck. And I was like, maybe Kat's wrong about this. And then the movie just kept going, and I was like, oh boy, was she right about this. It was very confusing the way that this stuff works. Maybe we're both dumb. I don't know. I usually am like, I'm the dumb one, but I think maybe we're both dumb on this one. Like, we just have no idea how this works. I didn't think the music was that great. except for that wonderment theme. The animation was pretty standard. Like nothing was crazy good. So with all of that in mind, yeah, 4.5 out of 11 for Patema Inverted from Joe.
All right. Well, I think I'll bump it to a 5. So I'll give it a half amp higher than yours.
Okay.
And I think because I liked the music and I liked some of those funny moments, so I'm gonna give it that. But it's not quite enough to get like to the halfway point. I give this movie a C, like in terms of grades, where it's like, I mean, you passed.
I mean, with your amp score, it's definitely an F. Like it's less than half.
Well, it depends. That's not how I think of it exactly.
Okay. What do you think is an F?
I don't think.
In terms of our amp
do you think a
scores?
7 out of 11 for one of these movies is a C?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
See, I think of that as like a B.
I think of a B as like an 8.5.
I think like a 2 is an F. A 2 or a 3.
2 is a grave F. That's like this movie's rough to get
But like,
through.
do you think between 1 and 6 are all Fs?
Yes. I think that
Just
this
different
is
levels of Fs?
Look, there's different levels of Fs. I mean, there's like an F where you just barely missed passing, which is what I feel like you think this is. But you're saying it's a C. It is definitely not a C.
It's like, yeah, I guess it's a D.
It's definitely an F. It's less than 50.
But I don't think of it the same way as you do, because I think that the sort of like 1 through 4 is kind of the F zone, and then maybe 5, 6 is like D. Yeah, I guess a 7, 8 would be C, and then 9, 10. No, I don't have a B.
So if
This
you
doesn't
saw,
correlate very well to my ideas of how I grade things.
yeah, if you saw like, I mean, most movie review things are like 5 stars. If you saw that a movie was rated 2 out of 5 stars, would you be like, that's a C?
Yeah,
That's insane.
because
Insanity.
because like I think the 2 or 3 stars is kind of the C range, DC, because 4 out of 5 stars is a B, 5 out of 5 is an A, 3 is C, maybe 2 is more like a D,
Okay.
and then a 1 is an F.
Well, it's a good thing we do things a little bit more complicated here. We do things out of 11, and you gave Patema Inverted a 5, which is a C in your eyes.
Yeah. C minus.
Okay. Does that wrap it up?
For the love of God, please.
All right. Well, thank you for listening, everybody. This has been our episode on Patema Inverted. You really need to follow the YouTube fucking page for this episode with all of our diagrams. We have a YouTube channel. Just look up the Anime Movie Podcast on YouTube. We post clips. We post full episodes of the podcast. You can follow us on anywhere. There's podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, whatever. And if you want to reach out, the Anime Movie Podcast at gmail.com, or you can follow us on Instagram and slide into those DMs at the Anime Movie Podcast. And that wraps it up. See ya.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Anime Movie Podcast. You can follow us on Instagram at the Anime Movie Podcast, and you can reach out via email at the Anime Movie Podcast at gmail.com. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and tell a friend. Thanks. Have a good one. Bye.